This is the Angry Birds Bird Minute, sponsored by Angry Birds for their 15th anniversary, where we tell you all about a cool bird that may or may not be angry. Today's bird is the macaroni penguin. The macaroni penguin is a large penguin with a snazzy yellow crest. With hair slicked back like a 90s boy band, 11 million macaroni penguins swim the Southern Ocean in search of krill, squid, and fish. That makes them the most common penguin on Earth. Sometimes that can also lead to conflict in the dense, highly populated breeding colonies, where they will engage in defensive displays and even bill jousting, in which the birds hold beaks and attempt to wrestle each other to the ground. But are they angry? On a scale of 1 to angry, we rate the macaroni penguin as probably gonna start a fight? Wait, I know that can't be right. I guess there ain't no lie. They're saying bye, bye, bye. This is Wild Green Streams. I'm Rhett.
I'm Io.
And today we have Mikie Green, host of the YouTube channel CoolCritters, with us. Mikie's channel focuses on all kinds of usually insects, herps, various other animals that he finds in and around the different areas that he explores. Welcome to the show, Mikie.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
But before we get into talking about your work, I want to talk about this really crazy study that Io found the other day.
It is a cool paper that I came across. It actually came out in January of this year, and it took a little bit to find its way to me. But as soon as it did, I was like, why is no one talking about this? This is crazy. So for one of the things that I myself, as an entomologist and bug-loving person, have wondered for so long is why insects congregate at lights. And this has been puzzled at for as long as humans and lights and bugs have existed together. And like, there's been all sorts of things that are familiar with, they think it's the lights or the moon and they're flying towards it, or they think it means it's an open clearing, so they're trying to get away from predators. But then some research was published in Nature Communications, and they noticed that a lot of times when insects would fly at night, they would kind of turn their backs towards different lights. So then they set up an experiment where they put these insects in a box, and some trials they ran it with a UV light on the upper side of the box, and in some trials they ran it with a UV light on the bottom side of the box, and they let the bugs go to fly in to see what they would do. When the light was on top, they flew normally, no problems. But when the light was on the bottom, the bugs did a 180 flip over upside down to try to orient their backs towards the light.
This is that video, by the way, Mikie.
Yeah, so if there's in the video we sent, which we could probably link this in the show notes.
I think we should, yeah.
It's really cool for people to check out. There's a video of the bugs flying.
It looks bizarre. It looks like they're getting blown in the wind. It's really crazy. They flick the light on at different points, and it's at different angles, and you can see the bugs do crazy turns and flips and all kinds of things, trying to figure out how to orient themselves. The original explanations never really made sense to me. The idea that they would fly towards the moon, what is the benefit of that? And also, when do they stop?
Yeah, and just keep flying forever, bugs in space.
Just up and up and up. And then the other thing is okay, they're flying into open areas. Why? There's no cover there. They're more likely to get eaten. That's where all the bats are.
Yeah, that one I hadn't even heard until much recently, and I was like, this doesn't make any sense, because presumably if it's an open area, then if it's clear, that means there's no predators, but that isn't necessarily the case. So they named the behavior the dorsal light response, and they think because for most of history, the world, the only illumination came from above, either from the sun or from the moon. So it would make, if you need a way to orient yourself when it's dark, that would help you do that. If you're like, oh, I just need to keep the sun behind me. If anyone ever does boating, when you're going in and out of the channels, there's red and green buoys, and you keep the red buoys on your right-hand side when you come back in, so you know which channel you're on the way. You're like, oh, that's my buoy.
We've gone and switched their buoys.
Yeah, we've switched their buoys. So now that there's artificial illumination, they're like, oh, this is up and this is down. And then it makes them fly differently. And so they just, because they keep turning their backs toward, keep flying towards it. And I was like, it's such a simple explanation. And yet it took us so long to figure it out. And it's really cool. And I would be curious if like bugs fly differently on a full moon versus a new moon. I don't know how that would affect it. I mean, there is starlight, but
Right.
I thought that was like a really cool thing. So I was like, I need to tell as many people as possible about it. And so with our unsuspecting podcast guest, I have unleashed this information on you as well.
You said something about like the moon phases. I actually do know that it's a little harder to find insects during a full moon because it's already illuminated, like especially if it's a really bright one. It's already illuminated, so the chances that an insect is going to use your light as a frame of reference is
Interesting.
any other light in the sky.
Right.
That's why it's also not the best to set up a light sheet in very urban areas where lots of people have porch lights.
I've run into this problem.
If they choose your light over all the others is lower than if you do it in a very dark natural area.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me.
You got to really narrow down their options, make them desperate to come to your light in your backyard.
So we should say you have a lot of experience both with walking around with a headlamp or a flashlight at night looking for bugs or setting up a light sheet. Do you want to tell people a little bit about what you do?
Ironically enough, I actually haven't done too much light shooting myself, but it's mostly because most of the natural areas around where I live close at night. I don't have a lot of access to it, but I do like going around different places that are open at night and just using a flashlight. And honestly, what's really interesting, wolf spiders are some of the best I find at night because their eyes are like reflective, so you can see them from a long distance. And I really love going out at nighttime and looking for wolf spiders.
They're like little gems.
Yeah.
They reflect almost like a bluish color. It's really pretty.
That's interesting to me. I always think about a lot of animals that people think are traditionally ugly. If you get people to look at their eyes, they'll suddenly be like, oh, that's a pretty animal. A totally different one is toads. Toads have beautiful eyes.
Toads have beautiful everything. I don't know what you're talking about.
True. Don't let me insult toads.
Actually, I had a dream last night about a massive cane toad, which I'm sure you're probably familiar with, but for those who don't know, are an invasive species of toad, very famous, invasive in Australia, and there are some in America. And they can get really big, but in the dream, it was like almost the size of a dinner plate and then some. It was enormous. And I was like, people need to know about this, because this has to be like a record-breaking toad. But
Florida.
yeah.
Average day in Florida. Yeah.
Yeah. Just classic riding your alligator to school, seeing giant cane toads, classic.
That was the first herp I saw when I went to Hawaii.
A cane toad?
Yeah. Actually,
Yeah.
no, that's not quite true. The first herp I saw when I went to Hawaii for work a couple years ago and got them to buy me a plane ticket with a couple days off on the end so that I could have kind of a free vacation afterwards. And the first herp I saw when I got to shore was a green anole, which for people who aren't familiar with the southeastern United States, it's native to the southeastern US where I'm based, but it's not native to Hawaii. So I had very mixed feelings about this green anole. I was happy to see it, and then I was like, wait a minute, this isn't where I normally would see you.
Also, there are no herps native to Hawaii.
That's true, except for yellow belly sea snakes.
Okay, yeah.
That's kind of cheating though.
No terrestrial ones.
Yeah.
I knew that there were no native ants in Hawaii.
Really?
But I
Oh,
didn't-
really?
know that.
Ants?
I didn't know that.
Do they have the misfortune of having the red imported fire ant too?
I don't know if they have the red imported, but I do know that there's a couple invasive species in Hawaii.
Rip.
Yeah, it's interesting. I would walk up a trail. So it's interesting because it's small and enormous at the same time. I was on Oahu for most of the time I was there, and you can walk from the city just up to the mountains. And I walked halfway across the island just for a little day trip, and the short way across, not the long way across. And I went from this coastal area to like an urban area to what looked kind of like Appalachia. It was really interesting. It was all in the course of a couple mile walk. I Ubered back to my hostel in 10 minutes after spending all day walking up. But as I went up, I was eye-natting all the plants, and it took me all day to find a single native tree. The entire
Rip.
place, it was all invasives. It's this
Damn.
bizarre experience.
RIP. I just looked up about the ants thing, and apparently, so there's no native ants confirmed, but there are 60 species of ants that have been introduced. And apparently there's an organization called the Hawaii Ants Lab that is building a photo gallery as reference for identifying the ants across the main Hawaiian islands. So we should reach out to them and talk about them about their ants, because that would be
Yeah, we
cool.
should. That's a great idea.
But Florida, no stranger to native and invasive species as well. Do you have a particular subject that is your favorite in Florida to either talk about or tell people about or like take photos of or interact with? And if it's, because sometimes I see invasive species and I'm like, rip, you're invasive, but like you're so beautiful. Like Burmese pythons devastating the Everglades, but they're just so pretty. And I'm like, I feel bad, but they're so cool. So do you have a favorite subject for your...
So do you mean what I'm the most passionate about or what works the best on YouTube?
That's an interesting distinction. I want to hear about both of those.
Okay, for what I'm most passionate about, it is literally everything. I mean, I started with birding out of things first, and then it grew into insects and herps and arachnids and marine life. More recently, I've been really getting into that as well, and I'm trying to figure out how to get people on YouTube to appreciate it, because birds don't work, at least not for my audience, because I've built it mostly on insects, herps, arachnids, things people would normally call creepy crawlies. Use that word because I don't think they're that creepy and a lot of them don't crawl, but they're cool. They're cool critters.
Cool critters, yeah.
Cool critters.
So I just find all living organisms, like just the fact that there's just so many and they all look so different. I just find it so cool. Your question was, what is your favorite to like talk to people about? Everything.
All of them.
What plays well on YouTube?
Yeah. So like I said, stuff that kind of has that danger or creepy factor to it is what I've found works the best for me. So my two best performing videos by far are spider videos. I've found some hit or miss snakes, but spiders are like what has been working for me the most. I'm trying to really expand. So I love spiders. If you can't see, I have a spider tattoo.
Oh, that's cool.
That's awesome. What species is that?
Red widow spider.
Sweet.
Nice.
That looks great.
Thanks. But so I love spider. I mean, they're some of my favorites. I can't rank because I love them all, but like top 5 probably favorite animal groups. But like at the same time, there's only so many spiders really that deserve full videos. So I really want to try and expand.
What made you get a red widow spider tattoo?
So it is my favorite spider. It is endemic to Florida, which means you can't find them anywhere else in the world but my home state, Florida. And they're just gorgeous. They're highly venomous. I wouldn't consider them dangerous, but they are medically significant. They're bright red, which is crazy for a spider. Yeah. And they can only be found in my favorite habitat, the Florida scrub, which is like dry, sandy pine trees.
Super underrated.
Is my personal favorite habitat. I feel right at home in it. And it is the only place in the whole world you could find the red widow. So I just have like a strong connection with it.
Oh, that's great.
What's it look like?
So a body length, I'd say maximum a bit more than a centimeter.
A little guy.
But the leg span, maybe like 4 centimeters. I'm not exactly sure how big it is.
Yeah.
But
they live under logs?
They live in palmettos.
Oh yeah.
Palm fronds, they make their webs. So you see these tangly webs around the palm fronds. Mm-hmm. You actually don't see the spider usually at first because they build this little kind of tunnel right in the middle and then they just sit and wait for food. So you really got to be like pulling through these palm fronds, looking through for any sort of webbing. Sometimes I see them in oaks. One time I saw one make a web in a pine tree.
Neat.
That was But like I'd say a good 90% of the time they're in saw palmettos. You'll see their web before you even see the spider.
It's a pretty good strategy. I wish I could just like sit and wait and have my food come to me. I didn't have to like go to the store. I didn't have to cook it. I could just like sit and wait and it would walk its way towards me and then I could just feast. Like that would be fantastic.
We're gonna build the web.
Yeah, you got to build the web.
That's true.
To kill it still. That takes some work.
And you got to maintain the web. That's true.
If you sit outside long enough, a squirrel might walk up to your hand, but I don't know how well you want to do that.
Maybe I'll go back to the drawing board. But in terms of the videos that you were saying do well and which ones don't do well, and you're saying the spider ones do really well, do you think that because there's sort of, I would say of the animal group, spiders have like a lot of misinformation and fear about them. Do you think that sort of that confusion, like the more misinformation there is, the more people are sort of like looking all over the place for answers, so that in a way the animals that are like have the most false information out them have the opportunity to like garner the most views towards like the actual correct? information?
That is the exact case. That is exactly what I think is happening. And so what I look for a video idea is a balance between two things, between recognizability and unrecognizability. So that might sound like counterintuitive, but like something that you look at it and like most people are going to know generally what it is, but most people are not going to know about it. And if they do know about it, they know the wrong stuff about it. That's what I'm meaning. So like one of the videos that did really, really well this year was one that was about actually a potentially undescribed, but just considered a mystery right now because no one has really identified it, species of spider that seems to be an invasive here in Florida. That video did really well because it's like people see spider, it's a big scary spider, but like at the same time, we don't know what it is. And that's something that's interesting. So that's actually something for when planning out video ideas. And that's how I'm trying to spread. Right now, I'm trying to find some sea creatures that have a bit of a scary aura around them, but that really aren't. You know what I mean?
In the Zoom call right now, you have a guitarfish behind you. Is that one of the animals you're trying to get videos of?
I'd love to make a guitarfish video someday. I think I would probably wait until I can show really that sea creatures are going to work, my type of content. Because a guitarfish, a lot of people haven't really heard of these guys. They're very rare. They're not particularly dangerous. They're pretty small.
Right. Yeah, I see.
I love all animals equally, but for video ideas, I like finding things that have a bit of a reputation to them. And then sometimes I just don't care and I throw all content strategy out the window.
True.
I need a little brown grasshopper because I feel like it.
What kind of animals do you think are in the sweet spot? Like, what's something you're thinking about trying to focus on?
Are there any particular sea creatures that you have that you're like, I think this would be like for the first foray into marine life, I think this could be a good contender?
I have an idea that's currently in the works with someone else right now, and I don't know how much I would want to.
It'll be a secret. That's okay. Don't worry.
That's all right. What's your second best idea?
There you go.
Sea spider.
Sea spider?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
You got the search engine power there, but it's a totally different thing in reality.
Tell people about sea spiders because I feel like they don't know, but they need to.
Oh, sea spiders are just the most awesome little group of arthropods. They are called sea spiders. They have 8 legs. They have the same kinds of like jaw structure as spiders, the same similar, obviously more adapted to water, breathing mechanism as spiders. They're actually in a group that is just barely outside of arachnids. So they're not spiders, but they look a lot like spiders and they are related to spiders, but they're completely marine and they're most of the ones, at least here in Florida, are really tiny. So you probably wouldn't see it if you're not like really looking for, but they are.
I didn't know they had them in Florida. That's so cool.
Yeah, they're pretty rare to find over here in Florida, and all the species here are small. So me trying to find one, it's gonna be a challenge.
The only ones I'm familiar with are like the really big ones that live in like Antarctica, that are like large but also hard to get to because they like live on the seafloor, you know, under very cold water. Do the ones that, I mean, there might be a few species, I'm not sure, but for the ones in Florida, what kind of habitats do they prefer? Like, are they on the reefs? Are they in tide pools? Are they in, you know, coastal areas, sea bottoms? Do you know kind of what areas they like to hang out around?
So I've heard 2 things about kind of where to look for them. Rock reefs and seagrass beds in the intercoastal is where I've heard that they, are more likely to find sea spiders. The species here are so small that they might be in more places than just that, and people just haven't found it. But yeah, they blend in quite well with like sponges and corals that grow on the rock reefs.
I am so excited. I didn't know, because I always thought that like the huge Antarctic ones were so cool. I didn't know we had them so close to home. I'm like, wow. Celebrity sighting by my house.
The strange phenomenon where they get bigger in colder waters. The farther north you go on the Atlantic, they also start getting bigger than the ones here in Florida.
Interesting.
It just happens that we have tropical waters here in Florida and our sea spider are tiny.
Right. Right. That's really interesting. You know, a lot of large mammals go through a similar pattern. You'll have within a species, you've got these giant ranges for a lot of mammals, especially in the Americas, where like you'll have some version of a panther everywhere from Canada all the way down to Argentina. And in the equatorial areas of their range, they'll be much, much, much smaller than in the polar areas. So we get big white-tailed deer, you know, up in Illinois and, you know, up north into, you know, Canada and everything. You go down to Florida, the Florida Keys have key deer, which are smaller than a dog.
This phenomenon even has a name. It's called Bergman's Rule, where populations of that are in colder environments are often larger than the ones that are in warm environments.
I visited Massachusetts last year when it just so happened to be the record coldest week in Massachusetts since like the 50s.
Perfect time to visit.
I tried birding. That was hard.
Did you find anything?
I got my lifer black-capped chickadee.
Oh, nice.
Yay!
The worst picture ever, but I got it.
But it's still...
You got it.
I noticed the turkeys there were so much bigger than the ones I find here in Florida. And I was just impressed by how big the ones I see, because I work at a park where there's a lot of turkeys down here in South Florida. And so I see them all the time, and I'm always impressed when they come next to me. I'm like, wow, that thing's huge. And then I was in Massachusetts, and I was like, that's like a peacock.
Right. Yeah, they're huge. It makes sense to me for warm-blooded animals that don't hibernate, because the bigger you are, the longer you can retain heat for. They kind of act as their own blanket. But it's really interesting to hear about an invertebrate doing the same thing.
Yeah, it's weird. And, you know, for now, I'm going to have to stick with these tiny Florida ones, because if you look at my view counts, you'd know I can't afford an Antarctica trip.
I'm still trying to see if I can pivot my job somehow to require me to go to Antarctica so I could go there on someone else's dime and not my own. We'll see if it works out, but that's generally the plan. I'll keep you posted.
That's a great plan. Try and avoid security. Bring me a sea spider.
I'll do my best.
FBI, that's a joke.
Yeah, it's totally a joke. Yeah,
For legal
especially
purposes,
since
this is a joke.
For sea spiders are all leg. They're like all surface area and no volume. So like, why did you become all surface area and no volume in a place that's so cold? But they did.
It's really weird.
For people who are listening or watching or whatever and don't know what they look like, it just looks like if you took a spider's 8 legs, took them off of a spider, and glued them back together.
It's kind of like a kid's bad drawing of a spider.
This is a lot less gruesome than mine. Don't think of taking the limbs off a spider, please.
Both accurate descriptions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They tried to put them on the cover of Vogue, but their legs were too long.
Truly.
Well, speaking of long limbs and extended body parts, at the time of recording, the Summer Olympics is happening, and I love the Olympics. I think it's so exciting. And also what I think is really cool is thinking about what animals, particularly invertebrates, would be good at which sports, because especially with insects, I didn't know much about insects before I took a class in college, and then my eyes truly were opened as to like the diversity of what they've got going on, their body plans, their abilities. Like they have if you can think of any like alien ability, there's an insect on the earth that has it. The aliens are here and they are like living in the plants. So are there any that immediately come to mind if you're like, I think there's diving beetles. There's lots of beetles that swim. So I'm like, they could be good at swimming. Maybe there's other ones that could be good at into categories of the Olympics where you think they would excel. What would be your like go-to?
So too bad it's not the Winter Olympics, because sea spiders would be great at hockey.
Oh yeah, we'll count the Winter Olympics too in our discussions.
Sure,
but this is hard.
I know, and I every time I'm like, I need to like what I should do is like sit down and write it out, because there's so many sports that could be good for it.
There's a sport for every animal, I bet.
Oh yeah.
Who do you think would be good at shot put?
Shot put. That's where you like spin around and throw the ball, right?
Yeah. This big heavy thing. Yeah.
Man.
There is my thought for any of the throwing things. I learned about this when I was in my entomology class, and I was like, people need to know about this. There's a species of spider called the bolus spider, where the way that most spiders hunt, they like either make a web or they'll go after prey actively, stuff like that. What this spider does, I don't know what it uses at the end, but like a bolus is like a ball at the string that you can like swing around and throw. It can be used as like a weapon for hunting or things like that. But that's basically what the spider does. It makes kind of like almost like a little lasso type thing, but instead of a loop at the end, it's like a sticky ball. And so it will like sit in vegetation and plants and leaves, and then it will throw the sticky strand to hit the insect and then like pull it back in. And which is just, that requires a lot of like visual mental calculations of being like, I need to throw, this is this heavy, I need to throw it with this much force to reach that thing that is over there. And as far as I know, I think it's the only kind of spider that hunts like that. I could be wrong because I'm not a spider expert, but that for a shot put or any kind of the shooting sports, that would be my go-to. And also I'm like, people need to know about this because this is really cool.
Not a lot of animals that throw in general in nature, so it's always really interesting to see how some of them are using that kind of thing. Also, it's a reminder of how crazy and overpowered humans are. Like the fact that a lot of the stuff we do, the only equivalent we can find is some random invertebrate. It's really strange. Like we put together all these insane abilities and then we just showcase them at the Olympics.
What this means is that the spiders are the next to evolve and take over the human race.
I think so. You know, I was thinking too, in the opposite vein, there's a sport that can't exist for humans, but if we were lizards, this would be one of the coolest events in track and field, which is running on water. If we could have like really long pools and we could run, and they have to run until they sink into the water. And that would just be like a really cool visual of them going and going and going. And then they're like struggling and one of them's getting shorter and shorter as the winner is the only one on the surface for a minute. That would just be neat.
That would be fun.
I'm looking up the Olympic sports because I can't remember them off the top of my head.
There's so many of them, so don't.
Hockey is on the Paris 2024 list.
Field hockey, which I was like, what is that?
So you'd have really small sea spiders to play field hockey and then really big ones to play ice hockey.
But I see boxing on there.
Yeah.
There's plenty of animals that box right now.
Be like a kangaroo stereotypically.
Or I think I'm really in the spider like vein now, because I was thinking, I watched some of sailing today, and I know, that's another thing. There a lot of times the baby spiderlings will like put out in the wind and then like be carried off by so that could be one. And then I believe there's at least one, if not more, species of water strider that are completely marine that could maybe maybe that would be surfing.
You know, I think they would be surfing. By the wind sailors would be the natural sailing Olympians.
Oh, of course.
So by the wind sailors, for people who don't know, are these crazy animals. They don't even look like animals. They look like a bottle cap with another bottle cap like halfway off of it, and that's their sail. So they're like this flat disc, and then they have another half disc that kind of sticks out from the top of them, and they use that to catch the wind, and it blows them against the current sometimes, so they get distributed to all these places they wouldn't be able to get to otherwise. They just float on the surface passively, riding the wind and the waves. And they have some other body parts underwater, which they use to get their food. They're these crazy animals. They're just a combination of several other animals that work together to sail across the surface of the ocean.
Yeah, they're so weird. I've found a couple off the coast here in South Florida. But what's kind of interesting, that sail is like it runs diagonal across the body. And I'm pretty sure I read somewhere that like different individuals have it at a different angle, like a different either up and down to the left and right, or like right to left. So the ones that have it oriented like one way catch the wind one way, and then the ones that have it the other way catch it the other way.
Weird.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And that's like different species or just individuals in the same species?
Species.
Wow. That's really cool.
Interesting, yeah.
So with the angle like that they're colonial, right?
Yeah, they are.
I think so, yeah.
So like the angle that the colony makes that like what's it called? The fin.
The sail part,
yeah. It's called. Yeah, it's a sail. Yeah.
Like affects where it travels when wind is hitting it from the surface of the water.
That's so
Crazy.
cool.
So they'd blow the starting gun, and some of the by the wind sailors would just go in completely the wrong direction.
Oh, yeah, basically.
Yeah.
That's so interesting to think, because it makes me think of, for plants, they have different kinds of reproduction, and some have seeds that are eaten by animals and carried, but some, like, dandelions and stuff, are wind distributed. But I never would have thought that really about like animals being wind distributed, in terms of like they are, but also I don't know, I just never thought about it in that way of being so up to just where the winds take you, literally.
Yeah.
Well, Mikey, if people want to ride the wind over to your channel, where do they go?
That was an excellent segue. That was 10 out of 10.
Thanks. I've been practicing.
They go on to YouTube and they type Cool Critters, and every time I tell people, I get asked, is it both C's? Yes, Cool and Critters, both with the letter C.
With a K, I'm edgy. Don't do that. That'll go somewhere else.
So 2 C's, Cool Critters. That's how you find me.
All right. And hopefully praying for a big Antarctic sea spider video at some point. But in the meantime, we'll await the smaller Florida sea spiders as a little appetizer.
If that one does well enough, I won't need the Antarctic one.
True.
That's our show. Thanks for listening. Until next time, you can support the show at patreon.com/wildgreenmemes. That's memes with an M. This show's music is by Brian Barker and RX Fire. Until next time, I'm Rhett.
I'm Io.
I'm Mikey.
And happy Year of the Raccoon.